There comes a time in life when you realize that no one truly walks with you during your most critical moments. You can stand in the middle of a crowd, surrounded by voices and gazes, yet still carry a burden that no one else can touch. The modern world teaches us to fear stillness. It encourages you to fill every void with noise, busyness, and the validation of others, all just to avoid facing yourself. But it is precisely within that stillness that the truth begins to emerge. The Stoics understood that solitude is not a punishment, but the moment you stop running away. It is when you cease waiting for someone to understand you, save you, or validate your worth. And from that point, you begin to stand firm on your own 2 feet. Marcus Aurelius once reminded us that very little is needed for a serene life. Most of it lies in how you think and react. When you stop seeking recognition as a crutch, you are no longer a dependent. You become autonomous. This video is not about loneliness. It is about what happens after you accept walking alone, how you forge inner strength, discipline, and stability from within when you no longer need anyone else to bear witness. In this video, we will go through 8 Stoic rules for those who have stopped needing to prove themselves, but want to live true to their values more clearly and sustainably than ever before. And it is when you are brave enough to remain in that stillness that the true Stoic journey begins. 1. Solitude as the space to see yourself clearly. Most of us fear stillness and view solitude as a punishment. But in the Stoic spirit, solitude is not something to be avoided. It is the place where you stop running. It is the moment you are no longer swept away by noise, no longer forced to react or perform, and for the first time, truly face yourself. The modern world has conditioned us to fill every void with screens, with busyness, with unnecessary conversations, simply to evade the quiet mirror that reflects our inner turbulence. Seneca once reminded us that no one becomes wise by chance. Wisdom only appears when the mind is placed in silence long enough. When you stop speaking, stop explaining, and stop seeking validation, the truth begins to reveal itself. Just as muddy water only becomes clear when you stop stirring it, so does your mind. In that space, you are allowed to strip away every role, facing your fears, your uncertainties, and your true values, without filters, without applause. The Stoics viewed solitude as a place for silent training. If you cannot sit still with your own thoughts, you will always be dragged along by them. When you learn to observe your mind without rushing to judgment, you gradually build a serenity that does not depend on external circumstances. Mastering solitude is also when you achieve inner autonomy. When you are sufficiently connected to yourself, you no longer fear being abandoned or misunderstood because you have become your own most solid anchor. From there, you step back into the world, not to seek recognition, but to live true to what you have seen in the silent. 2. Accept the truth. No one is coming to save you. There is a moment in life when reality stops whispering and forces you to face a stark truth. No one is coming to rescue you. No matter how much you were loved or promised, when a true crisis hits, life does not send a rescue team. It simply waits in silence to see how you will stand up on your own 2 feet. We grow up believing in safety nets, family, loved ones, or someone who will understand us, stay with us, or pull us out of hardship. But maturity is the process of those nets being removed, one by one. It is not because life is cruel, but because you need to learn not to place your power in the hands of others. Waiting for someone to save you is like standing in the dark and hoping someone else brings a lamp. But when you accept walking alone, you realize you don't need external light to begin. With just one conscious step, the darkness no longer has the power to keep you still. Epictetus once said that no man is truly free if he is not master of himself. You cannot control who stays, who leaves, or what others think of your choices, but you always have the right to choose how you react. When you stop waiting to be saved and stop living according to external recognition or judgment, you begin to enter a state of autonomy. The stillness of being alone is not a punishment. It is the moment you stand by yourself, no roles, no need to prove anything, and realize that you are enough to move forward. Not because you don't need anyone, but because you are no longer dependent on anyone else to stand firm. 3. Learn to close old chapters on your own. Closing old chapters is not about trying to forget what happened. It is about ceasing to live as the person you once were. There were versions of you that needed to be understood, that waited for an apology, and that reacted out of instinct and emotion. But they no longer fit the person you are building today. We are often held back not by the past itself, but by our old internal habits, our ways of thinking, enduring, and justifying ourselves. When you continue to react as your old self, you grant the past permission to exist in the present, even though the story ended long ago. Mature individuals do not need to wrap up every story perfectly. They simply refuse to let the old version continue to drive. No more arguing, no more proving, no more repeating the choices that once led them astray. Closing a chapter of life is a silent decision. From today, you no longer react, no longer live, and no longer choose like that old person. And in that very moment, you walk lighter, not because the past has disappeared, but because it no longer has the right to decide who you are. 4. Failure is where you learn what no one teaches. Failure possesses a quality that success never has. It does not lie. When everything falls apart, you no longer have a place to hide behind titles, plans, or the expectations of others. What remains in that moment is how you truly think, react, and take responsibility. When things are going well, it is easy to believe we are on the right track. It is only when failure occurs that you are forced to look directly at undisciplined decisions, ignored limitations, and self-illusions. No piece of advice can replace that moment of realization. The Stoics do not rush to erase failure, nor do they use it for self-blame. They view it as a rigorous test, what is within my control and what is not. From there, they adjust their way of living and acting, rather than just trying to feel better. Failure does not make you grow if you only want to forget it. It is only valuable when you use it to change how you act next time. Mature individuals do not excel over others by falling less, but by not repeating the same mistake in a different form. Failure is not a deep pit separating you from success, but a set of rugged stone steps. The higher you climb, the more your feet may ache, but it is the very roughness of those stones that helps you stand firmer when the true storms arrive. Failure teaches you not only how to stand up, but also what is no longer worth your energy. 5. Protect your mental energy. Mental energy often drains not because life is difficult, but because you allow it to be consumed by unnecessary things. Every time you react to something trivial, every time you try to explain, please, or fix yourself to meet others' expectations, you are silently depleting your own essence. The Stoics learned to distinguish clearly between what happens and how they interpret it. You cannot control the world, but you always have the right to decide whether or not to allow it to occupy your mind. Not every opinion requires a response. Not every emotion needs to be carried. Protecting your energy does not mean being cold or detached from humanity. It means setting boundaries clear enough to avoid being swept into the chaos of others. You can care without losing your serenity. You can listen without letting their emotions become your burden. Stillness is not an escape. It is where you return to recalibrate yourself. The mind is like a room with a window. You cannot stop the wind outside from blowing past, but you always have the right to decide how long to keep the window open and when to close it. When you know how to filter what is worthy of your attention, you step out into the world lighter, clearer, and no longer pulled off balance by unnecessary noise. 6. Daring to disappoint others to avoid betraying yourself. Trying to please everyone is not only impossible, but also a silent way of betraying yourself. Every time you say yes when your inner voice wants to say no, you trade your internal peace for a temporary sense of security, and that price always increases over time. Living true to yourself means accepting that some people will be disappointed. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because you have stopped living according to their expectations. That disappointment is not a measure of your morality. Often, it is simply a sign that you have placed a boundary where it belongs. Mature individuals understand that saying no is not about being against someone, but about refusing to continue betraying themselves. You do not need long justifications, nor do you need to be understood by everyone. Truly solid relationships will survive even when there is disagreement. Relationships built solely on people-pleasing will soon demand more than you can give. Trying to please everyone is like a boat attempting to flow with every current at once. It will either remain stationary or be torn apart. To move toward your own ocean, you must be the one at the helm, accepting that you will have to sail against a few waves. 7. The deepest victory is mastering your reactions. Most people spend their entire lives trying to control the outside world, circumstances, people, and outcomes. We grow frustrated when things don't go as planned, anxious when the future is uncertain, and angry when others don't behave according to our expectations. But Stoicism looks directly at a difficult truth. The world is not under your control. The only thing that truly belongs to you, from beginning to end, is how you react to what happens. Every day brings small situations powerful enough to pull you out of balance. A disrespectful word, an unreasonable delay, an unfair action. Reacting immediately is easy. It is a reflex. But a reflex is not strength. Strength lies in the moment you pause. The moment you refuse to let anger, fear, or ego speak for you. In that very second, you reclaim your power of choice. Mastering your reaction does not mean becoming emotionless or suppressing your feelings. On the contrary, it is the alertness to recognize emotions without being dictated by them. You still feel discomfort. You still feel pain. You still feel injustice. But you do not let those emotions decide your words, your actions, or your path. You learn to observe your mind from a distance, far enough to avoid being swept away by momentary impulses. When you react according to old habits, you live at the mercy of circumstances. When you react consciously, you begin to live in your own hands. The Stoic does not seek to win every situation, nor do they need to prove they are right. They focus on one thing only: keeping their inner self undisturbed by things outside their control. The world may be chaotic, people may be unpredictable, and life does not promise fairness. But when you master your reaction, you achieve a rare form of freedom. The freedom from being dragged by circumstances, from being manipulated by emotions, and from having your state of being decided by others. It is a quiet victory, without display, but it determines the entire depth and quality of your life. 8. Your value requires no certification. Most people live as if their worth must be constantly validated through achievements, attention, or a sense of recognition. But when you place your self-worth in the hands of others, you also grant them the power to dictate your state of being. Today, if you are praised, you feel valuable. Tomorrow, if you are ignored, you begin to doubt yourself. The Stoic sees this instability clearly and chooses a different path. They understand that public opinion is ever-changing, and that which is volatile cannot serve as a foundation for personal value. If your worth depends on applause, you will always live in a state of waiting, waiting to be understood, waiting to be liked, waiting to be seen. True value does not come from how highly you are rated, but from whether you remain true to the principles you have chosen. It manifests in decisions witnessed by no one, in how you behave when there is no reward, and in your integrity when no one demands that you do the right thing. When you no longer need others to validate your worth, you stand firm in a position where the reactions of others no longer have the right to define who you are. Praise does not delude you. Criticism does not crush you. You do not become emotionless. You simply stop being pulled away from yourself. And that is the end point of this journey. When you walk alone long enough, master your reactions, and no longer require external certification, you stop searching for value. You become someone who lives from their values. The journey you have just traveled is not intended to help you appear stronger in the eyes of others. It simply guides you back to a more fundamental truth: standing firm with yourself. Walking alone, rising alone. It is not about detaching from the world, but about ensuring the world no longer pulls you off the path you have chosen. Stoicism does not promise an easy life. It grants you the ability to remain still amidst turmoil, to maintain clarity when everything around you changes, and to avoid losing yourself just to be accepted. When you master your reactions, protect your energy, dare to say no when necessary, and no longer require external certification, you begin to live from your values, without noise, without display, but with great stability. If this video has provided you with a useful perspective, please hit like to support the continuation of this content. If these words touched you, leave a thought in the comments. It doesn't have to be long, just whatever is truly within you at this moment. And if you wish to journey long-term with deeper Stoic content, subscribe to the channel so we can move forward together, without noise, without haste, but with enough clarity to never lose our way. Thank you for staying until the end.